All right, we are back now. Let me play with my hair a little. But we're back now with my team number nine. Yeah, so team number nine. Um, we are going along with Patrick. So everybody's Eskimo brother. So I really do like this draft. It's very interesting. So Patrick's very boomer bust. Starting things off, he went 13 overall, 41 bucks on DeAndre Hopkins. So I guess we could say Patrick and Ryan are our resident wide receiver followers. Hopkins was his, again, very consistent self last year. Top five receiver again for the fourth consecutive year. 1,400 yards, 6 touchdowns. Uh, I don't really know what else to say, but other than yeah, Hopkins is going to, again, be a top five receiver. He reminds me a lot, I guess, if we want to do a draft comparison, of Roddy White or Greg Jennings, the former Atlanta Falcons and Green Bay Packers players. He also reminds me a lot of Andre Johnson, the former Texans receiver who he shared his first couple of years with in Houston before Houston infamously traded him to Arizona last offseason. But yeah, he looks good. He looked good with Kyler Murray as his quarterback. Murray was just kind of dumping the ball off to him all the time, but he can have those monster games where he just wins you a matchup, and he's money in the bank. 41 bucks, he's money in the bank. So you know what you're getting. He's a top five receiver. 41 bucks, pretty good. Next at 18, we took DK Metcalf. So Metcalf's interesting. He's only 23. I, again, say he has probably the highest potential of anyone. Well, I'm just going to play around with my hair a lot today. He has the highest potential of anyone currently at wide receiver in the NFL today. He's a smaller Calvin Johnson, if I'm being honest. He's like 6'2", 230. So Calvin was 6'5", 250. And Johnson could run a 4.3. DK can run a 4.3. Obviously, you saw that rundown last year. Very fast. He's not at all a technician, he's a very raw route runner, if I'm being honest. But his athletic gifts, my goodness, oh my gosh, he's among the most athletic players in football. If Tyreek Hill is the fastest player in football, DK Metcalf isn't far behind, and you get someone who not only is fast, but also big, strong, very powerful. Honestly, if I was being fully truthful, if he was in the right offense, I would say he would be the number one receiver in fantasy. He's good enough to build an entire offense around, but he's not in the right offense. He's in the Seahawks offense, where they have a new offensive coordinator in Shane Waldron who wants to run the ball efficiently at least half the time with Chris Carson. So his talents are a bit wasted, but that doesn't take away from the fact that more than likely the Seahawks will fall behind in most games because they run the ball very early, and they'll have to rely on Russell Wilson to bail them out and consequently throw the ball to DK Metcalf. So, yeah, he had 1,300 yards, 10 touchdowns last year. I could see, again, another 1,300 yards, 10 touchdowns. I think his season will be eerily similar to what he had last year. So him and Hopkins are basically like number 5, number 6 in fantasy. I see them both as top 5 receivers. I think, obviously, you paid 48. I mentioned he has the potential to be the number 1 receiver in fantasy, but I believe that. I mean, Devontae Adams is the resident number 1 receiver in fantasy, but DK, pound for pound, is probably the best receiver in football, and you got him like $4 short of what Devontae Adams went for. So, yeah, no, I mean, he's an excellent player, super duper high upside. I really like the pick, even if I feel the price is just a little bit more than I'm comfortable with, but that's okay, because sometimes you gotta overpay for something you want, and DK's just an incredibly gifted athlete, and yeah, having him and Hopkins is a very, very good foundation. After that, we took Darren Waller. I was surprised at the Waller pick. I thought there were some receivers who were quite good still left, but honestly, because he's a tight end, I suppose you got a discount because you only got him for 21 bucks. And what's good about Waller is, unlike Kelsey, Kelsey gets a lot of yards and he might get touchdowns, but Waller gets targeted a ton. I had him last year, and there was a game where he had 14 receptions. He was just eating the Chiefs alive. And that's basically like in a half PPR format, that is what will make Waller very valuable to you. I don't think he'll be as good as, obviously, DK Metcalf or Hopkins, but I think he's like, if you take tight end off the label and you just slap on wide receiver, where you're basically going to play him at the wide receiver tight end flex, he's kind of like a top 15 receiver. He's a very good player. So to get him for 21 bucks is kind of surreal to me, if we're being honest, especially when I consider his season last year. He had, what, more fantasy points? Yeah, he had more fantasy points last year than Terry McLaurin. Now, obviously, we're buying McLaurin's upside, and McLaurin has a lot of stuff going for him. But, yeah, McLaurin went for 38 in our league. And that's a lot of just, like, hopeful upside. And you already got the upside with Metcalf. So taking rock solid Darren Waller as, like, your third wide receiver kind of flex option, for 21 bucks, that's a good deal. It's a really good deal. So, especially considering what Kelsey went for, like what? Kelsey went for 49. You got Waller for less than half that. Like, come on. It's a steal, especially with the half PPR. So, doing good things. But where's the running backs? Got to find a running back. Luckily, at 53, you kind of went budget again. This time we took DeAndre Swift. Now, I like Swift. I think he's the most talented offensive player in Detroit, especially with Marvin Jones gone and Kenny Golladay gone, and I guess Tyrell Williams is the number one, and Quintez Cephas is the number two, and TJ Hawkinson's there. Just funny enough, you took Hawkinson. We'll get to that. But, yeah, Swift is a second-round pick. They got rid of Kerryon Johnson. I guess they brought in Jamal Williams. You also took him, too. But, yeah, if Swift can stay healthy, then he's a very good receiving back. I thought, personally, he was the best running back in the draft last year, even though Clyde Edwards-Helaire got picked over him. He's just on a bad team. But funny enough, strangely enough, Detroit, by taking Penei Sewell in the first round, actually did good things. They're actually building out a good O-line. Even if I don't believe in Jared Goff, and even if I don't believe in the wide receivers, Swift is a good player. And if he's the best weapon you got on offense, you got to use that weapon. So I could see him getting like 200 carries and then another, on top of that, 70 receptions, which is a lot, which is a top 15 running back. He's a solidly number 2 running back with upside to be a number 1 possibly. Anthony Lynn's the O coordinator. What did Anthony Lynn do last year? He was constantly switching between like Austin Eckler, and then Eckler went down. He was using like Justin Jackson, even though he had Justin Herbert. So I imagine Anthony Lynn is going to be using a lot of Jamal Williams and DeAndre Swift, much to my chagrin. But it doesn't take away from Swift's elite tools. It doesn't take away from his ability to probably soak up a lot of touches in this offense. And I think, yeah, he's in line for a very high workload. I like Swift quite a bit, just based on talent, pound for pound. Having Jared Goff there actually might help him because Goff is bad, but the O-line's really good. So Swift will... The defense is really bad, so they're going to be in a lot of games where they got to score, and you got to get Swift the ball. You just got to get Swift the ball. So, yeah, I could see him having a very, very good season, and I like that a lot. For $29, again, if that's your number 1 running back, that's not bad. I would not say it's good, because other people went with elite running backs, but, you know, like Ryan I have ranked ahead of you, but he's building on Saquon, and you got Swift, and you got Swift for a much cheaper price. So that's not bad either. Moving right along, we got Odell Beckham Jr. for 11. I think that's a steal, even if OBJ isn't what he once was, because honestly, I don't believe in Baker Mayfield. I just don't. There's a reason why you don't sign that man to an extension. We can go into that later. But even with durability concerns, and even with the fact that he's in a very run heavy, run first offense, I think Beckham has elite upside. He still does. He's still quite an athlete. He was the number one receiver in fantasy the first 3 seasons of his career. And so, I mean, that's a while ago now. We're talking like, what, 5 years now? It's 2021. But if he can just be what he was in 2019 and maybe not what he was in 2016, we take that. We take that to the bank. That's still a 1,000-yard receiver. That's still 4 touchdowns. That's still pretty good. And he is a number one receiver. And I can't imagine, even with the development of Donovan Peoples-Jones, even with Jarvis Landry holding down the slot, and even with the fact that I don't really believe in Baker Mayfield, everything is there. Offensive line's elite. The rest of the pass catchers are elite. They paid Harrison Bryant. They have David Njoku. They got Kareem Hunt. There's obviously Nick Chubb. They got Jarvis Landry. But I still think the most talented player is OBJ. Can they get him the ball? I don't know. But to have that on your bench for like $11 is a steal. You obviously have the deepest receiving core in the league. It's not close. OBJ would be the number one receiver on my team. And he's not even starting for you. That's crazy, incredible depth at receiver. But going on with that, that also means your running backs are bad. So next, at 73, we took Sonny Michel for $10. So Michel got traded to the Rams after basically only playing like a third of the Patriots snaps. He didn't really mesh with the Patriots too well. They were trying to make him look Garrett Blunt, but he's actually a decent like bowling ball, I guess you could say. But despite getting over like 200 carries, he's never, in like his first 2 seasons, he's never had like a top 30 campaign just because he doesn't catch the ball that much. However, he is in a contract year. He's behind Darrell Henderson, who has been injured his first 2 years in the league. Cam Akers is gone. They got rid of Todd Gurley, obviously. Malcolm Brown is in Miami. So if we follow the assumption that Henderson is fragile, then Sonny Michel has value, especially in probably what will be an elite offense in LA. Do I think Sonny Michel is a super talented player? I do not. He was, unfortunately for Bill Belichick, a mistake he made was overdrafting Sonny Michel over Nick Chubb, his teammate. Michel just doesn't have those receiving chops, and he's obviously more injury prone. But that doesn't mean that he can't be a good player. He was a first-round pick for a reason. He is exceptional at breaking tackles, and he's just very, very difficult to bring down. He's very tough, strong running back. And obviously there's talent. He was a first-round pick. So he's got like RB2 upside, but right now, the way he is, he's basically like a low-end flex, if that. So right now, you're kind of putting him in there, hoping he can be your RB2. Chances are, maybe he won't be, but, Darrell Henderson's very injury-prone. Honestly, I think he has more trade value to you than he does utility as a starter, especially considering the fact that like Andre currently has Matthew Stafford and Darrell Henderson and Cooper Kupp. It would probably behoove him to try and get Sonny Michel behind Henderson. And yeah, so I like Sonny Michel. I like the talent there. He's got injury issues of his own, but I think he'll get quite a bit of play for the Rams. They didn't trade for him. They traded for him for a reason rather than signing someone. I could see like 700 yards, maybe 6 touchdowns, not a whole lot of receptions, but more than he's been getting with the Patriots. I think that puts him in a low-end flex. But the weeks that Henderson is out, he will be a rock-solid number 2 running back because there's nobody else in LA with the Rams. The Rams got nobody at running back other than him and Henderson. And Henderson's very fragile. So I like the pick. I just don't like the depth at the position, but you circled around and you got depth at another very, very strong position at receiver. So we took Big Ben Roethlisberger, so let's talk about it. We took Big Ben. He's your quarterback. I like Big Ben, obviously. Steelers are my team. Big Ben isn't aging gracefully, I would say. Last year he was on a very pass-heavy team, and they obviously drafted Najee Harris to run the ball more. But I still think the O-line isn't very good. I think the receiving core is elite. I like Najee Harris, but really the O-line is among the worst in the NFL. I think Ben, he was super duper high volume last year, but even still he was the 14th best quarterback in fantasy, and he hasn't finished better than ninth in fantasy in 6 years. So it's been a long time since Big Ben was like a top-end fantasy starter. Do I think he's a starter in our league? Yeah, probably. But he's more of a back-end starter. He's like 10 through 14. He's probably closer to 14 than he is to 10. He's maybe like the 13th best quarterback. Do I mind getting him for $1? No. He's better than some of the starters in our league currently. Somehow people, like Baker Mayfield was drafted, and Tua Tagovailoa, and Trevor Lawrence. Some of these bad picks, man, just wasting money on quarterbacks. But he's a back-end quarterback. He's a back-end starter. I like him for your team, obviously. I think it's really fun that you picked him, and, he's your favorite player, so I respect it. But if Ben were to decline, you got to move quickly, and you got to get a really good quarterback. And really, I think Roethlisberger's the reason I have you at 9. If you had, Kyler Murray, for example, and then you told me Roethlisberger was the backup, I'd probably even move you all the way up to, 6, maybe even 5. Because the rest of the team is just so freaking solid at wide receiver. But I suspect you're probably going to have to move a receiver to get a good starting quarterback if something were to happen to Ben. At 39, unlike with the Bucs, who are protecting Brady at 44, they got a great O-line. The Steelers' O-line is bad. It's among the worst in the NFL. It's not as bad as the Giants, but it's pretty close. So I think they're moving around. They already lost their starting right guard, so they're moving around the right tackle. It's not good. Their schedule's very difficult as well. There's just a lot of things that scream at me regression with Roethlisberger this year. So I like him, but for fantasy reasons, I think it would behoove you to look into getting a different quarterback. He's better than some of the quarterbacks on other teams, but there are better quarterbacks who are backups in our league, namely Kyler Murray, Matthew Stafford, Tom Brady. Obviously, I don't think you're going to be able to get Tom Brady because Charlie doesn't trade, but the other two, maybe Stephen trades Murray, I don't know, but Stafford's definitely available with Andre, and if things go off the rails with Roethlisberger, it could torpedo your season. Just because you're so thin at running back, your quarterback's very fragile. So, I like Roethlisberger, but that's really why I have you at 9. Just because you're so thin at running back, and Roethlisberger I'm concerned about. We took Kenyon Drake, next pick, $7 on there. He was the feature back in Arizona. He's now going to a timeshare with Josh Jacobs. Personally, I like Drake quite a bit. He's... as an athlete, I think he's gifted because he's very fast. I don't know what it is, but he reminds me, people don't know this, but his speed is like that. It's a little less than Chris Johnson, who was the fastest player in the NFL for a time with the Titans as running back. Drake doesn't have great vision, but when he hits that hole and he's right, he just explodes the hole. He is so freaking fast. His receiving proficiency isn't great, but he can catch the ball out of the backfield. I think the real issue is that he's sharing the backfield with Josh Jacobs, who I like as a talent, and they spent a first-round pick. And I don't know what John Gruden's doing. Making Drake like the sixth highest paid running back to be a backup to Josh Jacobs really makes no sense to me whatsoever. But he's a solid flex right now. I think he's a good player. He's going to get time just because they paid him to get the time, whether I agree with it or not. I just don't know if he'll get the volume to be anything more than an occasional flex because, he might get like 500 yards rushing and then 400 yards receiving, and he'll probably be the pass catching back over Jacobs. But still, it's literally like a 50-50 timeshare. It's like Fournette and Ronald Jones, which is funny because you took Ronald Jones later. We'll get into that. I think you got the better end of the deals in both those scenarios, even if I dislike Ronald Jones, because you got them so cheaply. I think, what was it? Fournette ended up going for 18, I believe, if I remember correctly, on Andre's team. Yeah, Fournette went for 18, and then Ryan spent a good $30 on Josh Jacobs. You got Drake for 7, and you end up getting Ronald Jones for 4. Like $11 for those two. And they're in a timeshare with the other two who they spent $48 on. Like that's just good value. I can't really argue with that. Even if I despise Ronald Jones as a player, that's good value. So next we took Michael Gallup, 95. He was $4. He's the number 2 receiver in Dallas. I think honestly, he's like the number 3 receiver. He was like wide receiver 22 2 years ago, but then they took CeeDee Lamb last year, so his production took a big hit. He got like 850 yards or so last year, and that was without Prescott. But I don't know if Dallas is good enough to be able to make Elliott, Lamb, Amari Cooper, and Gallup all matter. I think the first 3 all matter, but I'm not sure. I think Gallup is, again, probably a high-end flex play at best. I think he's maybe just outside the top 30 receivers. I could see a bounce back because Prescott's there, so I don't know if he'll get 1,000 yards, but I could see like 900, 6 touchdowns, occasional flex player. He's a good player. I mean, if I'm being like completely honest, I think he might be would he be? No, I think Mark Andrews is like a little higher than him. But yeah, on my team, like Michael Gallup might be like the number 2 receiver. It's like him or Callaway. I might take Callaway, but still, he's probably my number 2 receiver on my team. And he's like so far deep on your team. It's kind of ridiculous. You got Hopkins, Metcalf, Waller, OBJ, before you get to Gallup. And that's not even mentioning the next pick, which is TJ Hawkinson, who I do like quite a bit. I like Hawkinson quite a bit because, honestly, other than Swift, I think Hawkinson is going to get the ball a lot because the lines are bad. I don't trust Tyrell Williams. I don't trust Quintez Cephas. Gosh, I can't even think of their other receivers because they don't matter so much. But Hawkinson was like a first-round pick. Of course, Matt Patricia's a moron, but he was still a first-round pick. I don't like taking tight ends so high, but he only had like 32 receptions as a rookie, and then last year he had 67. I'm projecting a big jump for him, like 85 and close to 1,000 yards. And the reason for that is because I think he's the best pass catcher on the Lions other than Swift, which is interesting because you have Swift. I thought Hawkinson was a really, really great find. He's one of my breakout players. I wish I had more money at the time, but you got him at 113, so good value. Good on you. And I like Hawkinson. I think he's a good player. I think it's strangely enough with the offensive line being good and Swift probably being good, but the defense being no good, they'll be in a lot of high-scoring games, so they got to throw the ball. And I think, Swift's the number 1 weapon, but I think Hawkinson's a close number 2. And he is very, very talented. Despite everything I say about him, he's a very talented player. So I'm thinking like a very high season for him. Like, if we're saying Travis Kelce, Darren Waller, and Mark Andrews are the top 3 tight ends in football, Hawkinson might be number 4 because strictly on value, he's going to have enough value to be basically a receiver, which is really strange on your team because you don't need him. Like, we're talking like 6 deep now. But I like that pick too. You took Ronald Jones again, I mentioned before. You got Jones for $4. I don't believe in Ronald Jones. He can't catch. He can't pass block. He can occasionally blow open like a big run, but he has no vision, so he has to you have to make the hole very, very obvious for him, and he's got to shoot through it. But I think he'll get less snaps than Leonard Fournette. I think obviously he's going to get less targets because he can't catch worth a damn. And especially with Giovanni Bernard there now too. But he's a decent insurance policy on an elite offense. I imagine Arians will use him for some carries, so I could see him having some utility, maybe 750 yards, maybe 100 yards receiving, just purely out of coincidence. I imagine they'll be rushing Fournette at times. Yeah, $4. They got him for $4 and Kenyon Drake for $7. Meanwhile, Josh Jacobs went for 30 and Fournette went for 18. I like Jacobs and Fournette more, but they cost $48. You got $7 on Kenyon Drake and $4 on Ronald Jones. Like, who's the better deal? You got the better deal. So after that, we started loading up on running backs. Again, another running back, kind of like Jones, I don't like, but he's in a system where I know he will get play, and that is Jamal Williams. After 4 years with the Packers, where the Packers dumbly drafted him in the 4th round and ended up taking Aaron Jones in the 5th round. Yeah, who ended up being the better running back? That's right, Mike McCarthy, you were wrong. It was Aaron Jones. I had a much higher grade on him going in the draft. I knew Jones would beat out Jamal Williams. Anyway, not that I'm going to make sour grapes of it, but that's why McCarthy got fired. Jamal Williams, I don't like Jamal Williams. Everyone talks about, his pass blocking. He's not a good pass blocker. He's not a good rusher either. He has to make what the offensive line gives him. The Packers have historically, in Aaron Rodgers' years, never have had an offensive line worse than 10th. They have a very good offensive line. That's why he gets holes. He's not special like Jones is. That being said, DeAndre Swift is very injury prone. Anthony Lynn likes to use his pass-catching backs. Jamal Williams is a dirt cheap handcuff insurance policy for you. You got him for $1. I'm surprised you got him for $1, considering how much I hear from Sarah how good Jamal Williams is, even if I completely disagree. Purely based on handcuff utility, he is worth this, especially for you. So, he's a change of pace back. I imagine he will get lots of receptions, probably around what he usually does, maybe 33 or so, maybe 250 yards, maybe 600 yards rushing, maybe more carries than he ought to get, 150 or so. I don't think he has standalone value, and he's not going to be a top 30 running back, but purely as a handcuff to Swift, he's worth it on your team. So I like the pick for you, specifically you. It's very good utility for you. You did a very good job. You can tell with teams that didn't do research. I can tell with your team, you may not have done as much research as others, but you did do some. You were understanding, especially in the middle part of this draft, where players were and how they fit your team. And I really, really like the fit for your team. Again, I said it before, I don't know about the RB depth, but I think you've done a good job of trying to shore it up as best you can without paying the elite prices, and you have outstanding receivers. So I had to put you at 9 because I think, if I'm being honest, someone in my top 8 will fall out, and you'll probably get in. I just question if you'll be aggressive enough. If Roethlisberger implodes, will you be aggressive enough to be able to fill that hole with a good quality quarterback? They don't have to be elite. They don't even have to be they don't need to be a top 5 quarterback, but a quality quarterback. I would have really liked if we had taken the money for, Hawkinson and one of these defensive players and gotten Kyler Murray, because Kyler Murray was only $5. I would have liked to have done that, because that would really make your team, that would really put you on a high trajectory. it might be difficult for you to get a quality quarterback. Again, that's why I usually say Murray, Brady, and Stafford are like the three backup quarterbacks right now who probably deserve to be starting on someone else's team. So, but if Roethlisberger bounces back, you're probably in the playoffs, like easy money. Yeah, and you finished your draft before anyone else. There were 252 picks, and you got done at 140, and you took Philip Lindsay for $3. I like Philip Lindsay. I think he's in a bad place. He's on Houston. Houston's dumb. Whatever Robbie says is wrong. I don't care how much Robbie likes the Texans. He is wrong. They're literally doing a 4 running back committee. Like, it's Philip Lindsay, Mark Ingram, David Johnson, and freaking Rex Burkhead. But purely on talent, Philip Lindsay was in the Pro Bowl 2 years ago. Philip Lindsay is super, super quick out of the backfield. He was a great undrafted free agent find. In 2018, 3 years ago, he had like 1,200 yards rushing. Obviously, I don't think he'll get that because the Texans stupidly are going to committee for reasons unknown. But I think he is better than Melvin Gordon, who they kept in Denver. I think he's better than Mark Ingram, who 2 years ago had a very good season for the Ravens, but nonetheless, Texans are real bad. I think obviously he's better than David Johnson, who I'm waiting for to get hurt. And I think Lindsay ought to be the starter. I don't know if he is. Lindsay ought to be soaking up like 250, 300 carries. I don't think he is. It's more situation than anything else. But I think this is a good back-end find at running back. Getting him for $4, the floor is so low on him that you would have to imagine him and Tyrod that at some point when the Texans are like, I don't know, 0-8, they were just like, okay, Lindsay's our best running back, let's give him the ball. I would hope they would realize this. I don't know if they will because they're stupid, but I would hope so. I could see like 700, 800-yard season for Lindsay. There's just a whole lot of variance because the Texans have no idea what they're doing. Like, they're keeping Deshaun Watson on the roster but not playing him. They got Tyrod Taylor as the starting quarterback. They got no defense. They got no receivers. Don't give me Brandon Cooks and his concussion issues. You're wrong. I don't care. Don't care. The O-line's good, though. I just wish instead of, like, doing this 4-headed committee thing, they were just like, hey, Lindsay's really good. Let's give him the ball a lot. I think you could possibly win some games like that, but stupid people do stupid things. So, but as a last pick on just purely the idea that Lindsay is very talented, I agree with that. So, as a back-end player on your team, that's something really good. I think if you would switch out one of your defensive ends, I don't really know why you have TJ Watt and Daniel Hunter. I would just get a second linebacker. Hey, I don't know why everybody doesn't do that. But I think your team is good. I just ranked you as 9 again because the running back depth is very fragile. If DeAndre Swift goes down and Jamal Williams is your number 1 running back, that it will be very difficult for you because Jamal Williams will let you down. I like Philip Lindsay, but I think the Texans are going to be numbskulls and he's just not going to get enough play. I like the value on Kenyon Drake and Ronald Jones. If the starters go down, if Fournette gets hurt and Josh Jacobs gets hurt, good on you for getting not only the handcuffs, but handcuffs who actually have utility, and they could be like starters for you. But they're more flex starters than number 2s, but you can get away with it. But the key thing to your team is you want Swift to stay healthy as long as possible, and you want a bounce-back season from Roethlisberger. I don't know. I very strongly question if both of those things will happen. I think one will happen. I think the Swift thing will probably happen. I really like him a lot. But I'm a Steelers fan, and I have very big issues with trusting Roethlisberger. I don't mind that he's your number 1, especially because considering the circumstances. I just want you to be ready at some point to be like, okay, it's time to cut bait. Don't be Charlie last year. trotting out Carson Wentz for an entire season. You can't do that. When the ship is sinking, it's time to throw everybody overboard and try and get to land. Because the rest of the team is really good. Your receivers are so excellent that you can move them to get elite running backs. But I question what will happen with injuries, because injuries will happen to everyone. And I had to put you in the middle. I had to put you right here because I'm very, very leery of the depth at running back, and especially the starting quarterback. But I think you are a playoff team, despite where I have you ranked. More than likely, injuries will probably hit someone probably like Ryan, and you will just slip in. And yeah, I think you got. There will be necessary moves that need to be made throughout the season, but you're in a good place to make them. And color me impressed. I'm impressed with your draft. For someone who went completely the opposite way of me, like Mac went triple. It's kind of poetic. Mac went triple running back, and you went much more heavy wide receiver, and I have you guys around the same area. But honestly, the difference between the difference between team number 5 and team number 9, which is you, is very small. Like Justin, Andre, Ryan, Mac, you guys are all very close together. So injuries will decide a lot of things with fate, but I really do like your draft despite having you ranked at 9. I'm very impressed with it. I'm glad that you did some research, and really on the back end, I can tell you did, by just getting really good values with players. I'm really impressed by that. You are much, much deeper than a lot of teams in our league, which will serve you well throughout the season. So, good on you, Patrick. I think this is a good draft despite you being ranked 9. I think you will make the playoffs.